Hello. Hello and welcome. I'm Brenda McKinley, the Library Director at the Ridgefield Library, and it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to our second Battle of the Book based on Jim Mustick's masterwork, 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die. Tonight is the signature event of our LYL Love Your Library Weekend and is a fundraiser for the library, which you'll hear more about as the evening progresses. I'd like to start by thanking our partners in so many wonderful author events and literary evenings, Ellen Burns, Darwin Ellis, and the entire team at Books on the Common. It is such a gift to have a strong independent bookstore right here in our own community, and I hope that we all support them as well. Tonight would not have happened without the generosity and dedication of both Jim and Margot Mustick. From the very beginning, they have been integral in every detail, and I thank them both for everything, including the very fun door prizes. I also thank our LYL committee and our stellar group of presenters who will be battling tonight. Before turning it over to our host, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Jim. James Mustick began his career in bookselling at an independent bookstore in Briarcliff Manor, New York in the 1980s. In 1986, he co-founded the acclaimed book catalog, A Common Reader, and for 2 decades was its guiding force. Since then, Jim has worked as an editorial and product development executive in the publishing industry. So now I will turn it over to Jim. Enjoy the evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening. I'm happy to be here and to know that somewhere out there, there are a couple of hundred households tuning into this event. It's always a little unnerving to be speaking to so many folks who you can't see and hear in front of you, but here goes. How are you all? Given the state of the nation, I'll answer that question for all of us with this quotation from Gail Honeyman's novel, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, which seems somehow appropriate to the world we're living in. If someone asks you how you are meant to say, fine. You are not meant to say that you cried yourself to sleep last night because you hadn't spoken to another person for 2 consecutive days. Fine is what you say. So I'm glad you're all fine, as I am. A little less than a year ago, when in-person social gatherings were all the rage, we held our first Ridgefield Library Battle of the Books. It was a memorable evening in which former library board member Matt Burns won the voting with his eloquent advocacy for the poetry of Mary Oliver. I'd like to thank Brenda and the library staff for allowing us to do this again, and especially to thank Leslie Lampton, Lorene Bubniak, Christina LaRue, Andy Forsythe, and Carney Marsala on the library side, as well as my wife Margot, the producer on our side, for making this virtual event a reality. I'd also like to second Brenda's thanks for Ellen and Darwin and Books on the Common for co-sponsoring the battle, and to tell all of you that the books discussed tonight are available from Books on the Common. You can call the store at 203-431-9100 or directly, or email them at info@booksonthecommon.com for in-store or bookstore or curbside pickup. Or to have the books delivered directly to your home, you can order from the Books on the Common bookshop page using the link that will be appearing regularly in the chat section of the Zoom. If you're looking for the Zoom chat, just scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom screen and click on chat, and it'll appear to the right of your panel. I hope we can make this event as congenial and filled with good cheer as it was in the library last November. But right now, I'm staring at myself on Zoom, as I've been doing, as I'm sure you have been doing as well, for much of the past several months in remote meeting after remote meeting. And I am a little tired of looking at myself. 15 years ago, this experience would have had me dwelling on George Orwell's remark in his final notebook that at the age of 50, every man has the face he deserves. Now that I am 65 and spending so much time on Zoom, I'm inclined rather to think of Nora Ephron and to know that I feel bad about my neck. But enough about me. Well, not quite. Let me quickly tell you how these Battle of the Books came about. I spent a long time writing a 1,000-page book called 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die. When it was finally published in fall of 2018, in fact, 2 years ago to this very day, my wife Margot and I began traveling to bookstores and libraries around the country talking about how I came to write it. The best part of those evenings were the Q&A sessions with the audience after my presentation, during which I realized that, having spent the past 14 years writing the book, I was going to spend the next 14 hearing from readers what I'd gotten wrong, which in truth is what I was expecting, even hoping for. As I'd written in the book's introduction, this book is neither comprehensive nor authoritative, even if a good number of the titles assembled here would be on most lists of essential reading. It is meant to be an invitation to a conversation, even a merry argument about the books and authors that are missing, as well as the books and authors included, because the question of what to read next is the best prelude to even more important ones, like who to be and how to live. As I said, those merry arguments with audiences were the best part of those book tour evenings, and one night, Margot had the inspired idea that we make them an event of their own. Thus, the Battle of the Books was born, landing us in communities where local luminaries could share their own favorite books with us and their neighbors, which is how we got here with our stellar lineup of presenters tonight. Mike Flynn, Patricia Marks and Roz Chast, who will be participating as a team, Stephen Schwartz, Judy Silver, and Joel Third. I will introduce our battlers one by one, and they will get to speak for 4 minutes about a book I left off my list of 1,000 books that they think everybody should read. I will remind them gently when they have 30 seconds left, and more vehemently when they hit the 4-minute mark. After all the books have been pitched, I'll ask you in the audience to cast your vote for who was most convincing. But before I do that, one more thing. This Battle of the Books is a fundraiser that's part of the Love Your Library weekend. And Mike, Patty, Roz, Stephen, Judy, Joel, and I are putting our wits to the wheel in this event in hopes of inspiring all of you to make a contribution to the cause. In addition to the talented roster on tonight's program, another group of library lovers have created a matching fund of $3,000 to match donations made during this event. That means if you give 10 bucks or 25 or 50 or 100, it will be matched by our group of matchers until their $3,000 is exhausted. There's a link to make it easy for you to donate to make a donation in your Zoom chat right now or at any time this evening. So let's try to kick in $3,000 collectively, so all told, we'll raise $6,000 for the library's coffers. Any amount will be matched, but it's pretty simple. If 20 of you give $50 and 20 of you give $100, we'll meet our goal. So please consider contributing to the cause. And now on with the show. First up is Mike Flynn. There we go, Mike on screen. Mike joined the Boys and Girls Club of Ridgefield in 2002 as an intern and held a number of important positions over the years before being named executive director in 2014. He is the face of the Boys and Girls Club in the community and plans to continue to lead the club to new heights. During Mike's tenure as executive director thus far, the club has been recognized for 7 national awards from Boys and Girls Clubs of America. Mike has guided the Boys and Girls Club of Ridgefield to be widely regarded as one of the top clubs in the country. Above all, Mike truly cares for each child that enters the Boys and Girls Club and he aims to make a positive impact on each of their lives. The book he'll be talking about tonight is titled Goodnight Baseball. It's written by Michael Dahl and illustrated by Christina Forche. Mike, welcome, and let me know when you're ready to start, and we'll start the timer.
Thank you, Jim. I believe I'm ready, and thanks to everybody for being out there tonight. I appreciate being a part of this. And my book, as Jim stated, is Goodnight Baseball, and when I initially talked to Laureen about the program here tonight, I started to think immediately about kids' books and books that I feel are very impactful to young people as they go through adolescence and young adulthood. And as I thought through that more and more, I really decided to take that and make it more of a personal spin. And this book here is, as Jim said, Goodnight Baseball. And it's a book that means a lot to me personally. And it's a story of a young boy and his experience going to a baseball game with his father. And I think it's a beautifully written story, very detailed. The illustration is great. And it really just flows really nicely and paints a really sweet picture of an experience for a young person. And to me, it's personal in that it really underscores the importance of fatherhood. And growing up, I was fortunate enough to have a great father, and he really guided me to be the young person that I was, and then ultimately into adulthood. And one of the things that we always had in common was sports, specifically baseball. From a very, very young age, we really bonded over baseball, and he was a heck of a player, and I ended up being pretty decent myself. And so, through baseball and through this book, I really saw a lot of that in the story. And what made it really come to light as my selection was about 4 years ago, I became a father myself. And this was the first book that I read to my son Declan. And we've read it. You can see the pages are sort of falling out of it. We've read it hundreds of times, and he loves the book. And just about 2 years ago, I had another son, Nolan, who was born. And Declan is actually now reads the book to Nolan. So it's just a really special book to me personally. And again, I think it really makes me think of fatherhood and motivates me to be that type of father that I think is important. I think that I was fortunate enough to have. And when I think of my work at the Boys and Girls Club, through all those years, 18 years or so, as Jim said, there's been thousands and thousands of young people that we've seen, and a lot of them don't have that. And I think that, from a professional standpoint, also reminds me and others, I'm sure, of the important, work that we do, and the fact that, we do end up being surrogate parents, in my case, surrogate father to a lot of young people, and just how important that is. So that's why I selected the book. I think for me, it brings those things to light. I also just think it's a really simple read, but shows a young person bonding and enjoying, an event like going to a baseball game. And so that's why I selected the book. I hope that some of you out there will pick it up. It's been something that, like I said, has been read regularly here at the Flynn household, and hopefully it'll be something that continues to be passed the generation. So a great book, and I hope that everybody thinks about it and picks one up. And that was my selection, and that's why. So thank you very much.
Mike, thank you for telling us about that book. There's something very special about those books we share when our kids are so small. We've been going through that again with our grandson now through the second time. So those books hang around for a long time.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next contestant, I'd like to ask you to tell us one thing that the Ridgefield Library means to you or to the community.
Well, I think to me personally, and to most of us in the community, if not all of us, I think the Ridgefield Library is a pillar of the community. When you think of what makes Ridgefield special and unique, the Ridgefield Library is really right at the top of the list. And I also view them as just a great partner. I think we're all in this together. And they've really been there for the Boys and Girls Club, and I know for other nonprofits, whether it be RVNA or the Playhouse, Founders Hall, all the great nonprofits that do great work. They've just been a tremendous partner in the community. They have great leadership, great people, and are valued by all.
Thanks so much. Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So please as we're going through the evening, consider donating at the link. As I said, any amount will be matched up to $3,000. Our next presentation will be a team, Roz Chast and Patricia Marks together. Roz Chast's cartoons and covers have appeared continuously in the New Yorker since 1978. She published several cartoon collections and has written and illustrated several children's books. Her graphic memoir chronicling her parents' final years, Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, won the National Book Critics Circle Award and the inaugural Kirkus Prize, and was shortlisted for a National Book Award in 2014. It also has the distinction of having made the cut for 1,000 books to read before you die, and I write about it in my book. So there you go. First time we've had an author in the book as a presenter. Roz has lived in Ridgefield for more than 20 years with her husband, Bill, where they raised their 2 children. Patty Marks has been contributing to the New Yorker since 1989. She is a former writer for Saturday Night Live and Rugrats, and is the author of several books. She was the first woman elected to the Harvard Lampoon. She has taught at Princeton, NYU, and Stony Brook University, and is a recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship. She and Roz have written and illustrated 2 books together. Why Don't You Write My Eulogy Now So I Can Correct It? A Mother's Suggestions, published in 2019. And You Can Only Yell at Me for One Thing at a Time, Rules for Couples, published in 2020. It would be a good thing for a debate moderator too. Patty and Roz have been friends for more than 30 years, and consequently they will work as a team for tonight's battle. They also both play the ukulele in a 2-woman band known as Ukulele Meltdown. Patty and Roz, take it away. They're going to be talking about the Merck Manual.
Hi, Mon.
You're on.
We would like to make a case that the book to read before you die is the Merck Manual of Diagnosis and Therapy. It happens to be the oldest continually published medical textbook in English. It was first published in 1899, and it is not just fascinating reading, because who doesn't want to know about jelly, what are they called? Something, and well, just scurvy. But we believe that the Merck Manual is essential reading in the same way that anyone who owns a Toyota needs a Toyota manual. And it will tell you what's wrong, how to deal with it, whether you need an oil change, and when you should just forget it and take it back to the shop. It lists thousands of ways you can die, and many others that make you just feel crummy. And one more great thing about the book that we are pushing, and I don't think any other book tonight can say the same thing, it is over 3,500 pages. It weighs as much as a Chihuahua, and it makes a great doorstop.
Yes, and you can pick it up and read, and you don't have to start at the beginning and read all the way to the end, although, you know, you might want to if you choose to. I won't stop you. You can really start and you can work your way. You can read it in Hebrew. You can read it from the back to the front. Another wonderful thing about the Merck Manual is that if you have insomnia and you play alphabet games and you know, where you go from A to Z and you list categories, if you're going for diseases, of course, you'll know like appendicitis, bursitis, common cold, diphtheria, elephantiasis, you know, flu, gangrene. But what about Q? You come to Q and then suddenly you're wide awake. Did you know there was such a thing as Q fever? Well, there is. It's very rare, and you get it from farm animals and involves bacteria. And other than that, I can't tell you. But it's a very handy reference book. And as Patty says, since you are human, you should own and read at least some part of the user's manual. I think we're going to sing a couple of songs about this.
How great it is.
Yeah.
I'll start. Okay.
Okay, you start.
Uh,
And don't get your hopes up, by the way. We play musicians, but that might be a stretch. All
Okay.
right, take it away, Patty.
okay. Dog pox and dandruff and chronic rhinitis, rare Dutch elm syndrome and earlobe bursitis, mystery rashes and bone set in slings. These are a few of my favorite things.
When bites
Rabies,
and the bee stings,
anaphylactic shock,
feeling sad, I simply remember the Merck Manual, and then I don't feel so bad.
Should we quickly do our second song?
Yeah, let's do our second song.
Okay.
Okay. Look, look, look at this. Am I gonna die? No, 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 no. It's just a lousy sty.
Look, look, look at this. Doesn't it
Time's
look
up.
Time's
Time's
right.
up. You get the hook.
Okay.
Okay.
But that was wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
I have to say, it reminds me, Brenda said at the beginning that I started my career in bookselling in a bookstore. And as a very literary young man, I would be excited when John Cheever would come into the store because he lived not far away and was a customer and all of the literary things. But I was always stunned by the anticipation that would build when the new edition of the Merck Manual was coming out. This is true. We would sell scores of copies, and people would shuffle in and shuffle off to hypochondriacal bliss with their copy of the Merck Manual. So that brings
exactly
back
right.
memories to me.
Yeah.
Before the two of you go to compose some more wonderful ditties, Roz, would you like to tell us anything about the Ridgefield Library in your life over the years?
Oh, absolutely. We live down the street from it. We live in town. And I am extremely grateful to the Ridgefield Library because I love books, fiction and nonfiction, and old fiction and new fiction. And if I didn't have the library, I would probably be one of those people who was buried under millions of books. There would just be stacks of them and they would topple over on me. And the library is one of those wonderful places where you can go and you can see, do I like this author? Do I hate this author? What about mysteries? Do I like mysteries? I think suddenly I need to know all there is to know about Indian cooking. And it's just, you can just go there and it's this miraculous thing. You can go and you can get books and check out anything that you want.
Thank you so much. I remind all of you, this is the fundraiser tonight. We're closing in on the first 1,000 of our matching fund. I encourage all of you to contribute whatever you can. It won't take, with the numbers we have watching, if you can click to donate, you can do it now. We'll keep the page up for a half hour after the battle, but I hope you will participate. And I thank you, Patty and Roz, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Stephen Schwartz, who did not expect his songwriting skills to be challenged tonight with that performance we just saw. Stephen is a composer and lyricist for Broadway and movies whose works include Wicked, Pippin, Godspell, and The Prince of Egypt. He has lived in Ridgefield since 1971. The book he will talk about tonight, just as the book Roz and Patty just talked about, was focused on our mortal coil and our bodily functions, is going to speak to the afterlife. He's going to talk about a book called Some by David Eagleman. Stephen, take it away.
Thanks so much, Jim. Well, I have to say I am tempted to finish Patty and Roz's second song, but I did leave my ukulele in the other room. So instead, as you've described, I'm going to talk about Some by David Eagleman, 40 Tales from the Afterlives. As you can see, this book is definitely not a doorstop. What it is a collection of 40 highly imaginative, wildly original versions of possible afterlives. And some of them are funny, and some of them are poignant, and they're all thought-provoking. It's an easy read. Each one is 3 or 4 pages long. Each one is written with clarity of language and imagery. And each of the proposed afterlives offers a completely different view of heaven and God, and by extension, our own society and relationships and our own personal desires and dreams. So while it's ostensibly about what happens to us after we die, it's really a deceptively simple but quite profound meditation on all sorts of the things that make us very fallible and very funny creatures. But as I'm seeing myself, I think I'm in too mundane a setting for a book like this, so I'm going to take myself someplace else. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So the author, David Eagleman, is an interesting fellow in himself. Some is his only work of fiction, but in real life, Mr. Eagleman is an accomplished neuroscientist with a PBS television show about the workings of the brain, and he's published a lot of scientific articles and books. But this one small work of fiction has enthralled enough people to be published in 28 languages, even adapted into 2 operas. And you could easily plow through it in one sitting, but I recommend reading only 1 or 2 of the little visions at a time, and then giving yourself some time for the concept to bloom in one's mind. So that makes it perfect bathroom reading. And there's even an audiobook version with different celebrities reading the different afterlives. Now look, each reader is going to have his or her own responses about which individual vignettes are especially resonant. But to give an idea of the book, here are some of my favorites. So there's one called Missing, in which God is actually a married couple and the afterlife devolves into a battle of the sexes. There's one called Death Switch, where to solve the problem of people dying with their computer passwords known only to them, computer scientists create switches which check to see if people are still alive, but then people start manipulating them to pretend they're still around when they're not. As Eagleman puts it, humans have discovered that they cannot stop death, but at least they can spit in his drink. There's Subjunctive, where in the afterlife you're judged not against other people, but against yourself and what you could have been. And there are yous there who made better choices and yous who did worse. And as Eagleman says, you begrudgingly befriend some of the lesser yous, go drinking with them, but even at the bar, you see better yous who are buying rounds for their friends and celebrating their latest good choice. There's an afterlife where the Mary who sits on a throne is not the Virgin Mary, but Mary Wollstonecraft's Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, and whom God feels is the human who in all of history has most understood the difficulties he's had with his creation. There's even one, though I have to confess it's not one of my favorites, called Oz, with a little man behind a curtain. But probably my #1 favorite is called Egalitaire. And God, in this case, she, becomes uncomfortable with the idea of having heaven for good people and hell for the bad, because she comes to realize that humans are multidimensional and must have both good and bad in them. So Eagleman describes God's revised plan. She shuts down hell and she brings every human to be by her side in heaven. But what happens is the people in heaven resent that their enemies are there too. And so the chapter ends with the following. God sits on the edge of her bed and weeps at night because the only thing everyone can agree upon is that they're all in hell. So look, it's hard for me to imagine a book more imaginative or more fun, and I think you should give it a try. Thanks.
Stephen, thank you very much. And that was 3 minutes and 59 seconds, so very good.
There you go. I had to cut a little bit when I heard that bell, but yeah.
All right.
Came in just under the wire.
Would you tell us something about, you've been in Ridgefield since 1971. Can you tell us a little bit about how much the library has meant to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's meant a lot to me over all these years. What is that, like almost 50 years? Of course, it's become a much more beautiful building, and it's now much more conducive to meetings and presentations, as well as being a great library. But one of my favorite things about it is that my grandchildren, the Ridgefield Library it's their favorite stop on the Halloween walk. They love going to the library and getting to choose a book and rush home and read it or have it read to them. So I know that's sort of the exterior of the library and not the interior, but it's something that makes it very special to me.
Thanks so much. I remind everyone that to encourage you to express your good feelings for the library by making a donation at the link in the chat, and so that we can reach that $3,000 matching goal that we have tonight. Stephen Schwartz, thank you very much. We'll see you in a few minutes after we're finished with all the contestants. Next up is Judy Silver, who helped develop the reading department at Ridgefield High School, which I have to say is one of the most extraordinary educational ventures I've had the fortune to experience. It's imaginative and resourceful and really singular. It's a great benefit to the town. I was inspired to spend the day there one day, it seems like 100 years ago, when we could move around easily. And Judy currently teaches an array of popular reading electives. She was the 2016 Ridgefield Teacher of the Year and the selected speaker at graduation in 2016. She has presented Adolescent Reading Reimagined at numerous conferences, including the National Council of Teachers for English last year. In her free time, she enjoys running, yoga, hiking, and talking about books. And tonight, she's going to tell us about The 57 Bus by Dashka Slater. Judy, take it away.
I'm ready. Greetings from the Ridgefield High School Reading Center, where I currently am sitting. My book is The 57 Bus by Dashka Slater. This is a book we read in an elective course called Teen Voices in a Changing Society. This book is based on an article by Slater published in the New York Times Magazine on January 29th, 2015. Slater then realized that this story needs to reach an even wider audience, so she expanded the story into a nonfiction novel. The book explores gender and sexual identity, adolescent justice, the role that race plays in the justice system, and most significantly, the book forces its readers to consider whether forgiveness is an act of courage or weakness. So let's start on the afternoon of November 4th. Sasha, who identifies as agender, meaning neither male nor female, they is the pronoun of choice, gently closes their eyes to take a quick nap on the 57 bus in Oakland, California. Sasha takes this bus to get home from Maybeck High, a private progressive school where they attend. A few feet away, 3 teenage boys are laughing and messing around, typical chatter. One of the boys is Richard, a black 16-year-old who's a junior at Oakland High School. Richard surreptitiously flicks a lighter as a dare to the hem of Sasha's gauzy skirt. In minutes, Sasha wakes in a ball of flames. Wait, what just happened? Slater writes, there must be some way to wake Sasha. Divert Richard. Get the driver to stop the bus. There must be something you can do. Sasha will remain in the hospital for almost a month with extensive burns. Richard will be charged with 2 felonies, each with a hate crime clause that could add time to his sentence if convicted. My students asked so many questions. Why would someone light a stranger on fire? Is Richard homophobic? Is he a hateful person? Can there be justifications for Richard's actions? Is Sasha frequently a target? What does it mean to identify as agender? Does any of this even matter? They were burned. The 57 bus is divided in 4 distinct parts. Part 1 follows Sasha, a social history that focuses on Sasha's evolving identity. The book eloquently educates its readers about gender and sexual identity while maintaining the story of this tragic fire. In part 2, we get to know Richard from his birth to the day of the fire. Richard's mother had him at age 15, and she struggles to make ends meet. Richard witnesses the murder of his aunt and recently lost 2 friends to gun violence. Part 3 focuses on the aftermath of the fire, the media, the reaction of the community, the marches and protests, the court case, Sasha's parents, Richard's mom, Sasha's slow recovery, Richard's potential conviction. The last section of the 57 bus is called Justice. My students have a lot to say about how justice should be served. What I can attest to is the empathy my students had for both Richard and Sasha once they got to know them. As readers, we were shocked and disturbed by Richard's actions. But when we read deeply about Richard's life, we felt confused and concerned, especially when the community responds and the media starts to shape the story. The end of the book has us asking, when is forgiveness an act of courage? And when is forgiveness an act of weakness? Should Sasha forgive Richard? Can Richard forgive himself? This is a story that speaks to these divisive times through 2 teen voices, voices of resilience and voices of hope. Maybe we need to look to our young people for some answers. And finally, thank you to my dear friend Jenny, who on one of our amazing walks said, Judy, have you read the 57 bus? Thanks.
Judy, thank you very much. That's the best kind of recommendation, when somebody says to you, have you read this? Or you have to read this, and puts a book in your hand. Can you tell us a little bit about what the library means to you and the community from your point of view?
Sure. So my husband and I pretty much raised our children in that library. Starting from, ages 2 and 4, going to the children's, all of the story times and all of the readers groups there. And I can tell you the library has endless copies of the Berenstain Bears, because we probably took out every single copy of that book through the time raising my children. But now that my children are grown, I have to say the library is now my place. It is my most comfortable place in town. When I go into the library, there are certain people who work there who are always, I walk in, Judy, have you read this? Have you read that? And even when I call to reserve a book, I end up chatting with people at the circulation desk. So I have to say that the library has really been a home for my family in the 18 years we've lived here.
Judy Silver, thank you so much for all you do for your students, for reading, and for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now to our last presenter. And I can report that we're about $1,300 towards our $3,000. So please consider giving us a contribution tonight for this event. You can wait till all the presenters are done. There'll be a half an hour after we're done with the battle where you can, but I hope you will help us hit that goal. Our final presenter of the evening is Joel Third. Joel has been a hobbyist collector of antiquarian prints, including Audubon's, which you can see behind him now on the screen, and antique maps for over 40 years, coinciding with his lifelong interest in history. Joel was born and reared in northeastern Ohio and graduated from Case Western Reserve University with a degree in engineering. He retired in 2007 after 47 years as an international communication engineer and marketing director for ITT and Harris Corporation. He and his late wife, Betty Jane, moved to Ridgefield in 1992. He is past president of Keeler Tavern Museum, Ridgefield Rotary Club, Ridgefield Men's Club, and currently on their and the RSO boards. He is a member of St. Stephen's Church and the Ridgefield Graveyard Committee and a facilitator at Founders Hall. The book he'll be talking about tonight is John James Audubon, The Making of an American, by Richard Rhodes. Richard Rhodes. Joel, thank you, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Jim. I really appreciate that introduction. First, I wanted to thank the library staff for including me in this event. I'm really flattered by being part of this group. Well, my book is John James Audubon, and the subtitle is The Making of an American, because it's a lot more than just a biography, as we'll talk about. The author is Richard Rhodes, Pulitzer Prize winning author. He actually wrote a book about the history of the atomic bomb. Now, we're not going to get into that tonight, but he won a Pulitzer for that. The book was published by Knopf in 2004, and it's really a good biography of Audubon, which really hadn't existed up to his time. It's well documented with letters and journals of Audubon himself. It's fully illuminates the life of John and his wife Lucy through their whole journey before he developed and printed his masterpiece of the bird prints. Why Audubon? Well, as Jim pointed out, I've been a collector of the Audubon prints for some time, and the other thing, I've done an exhibit at the library with the Audubon prints, as well as the maps, and had another exhibit on Currier knives. So I feel really connected not only to the Audubon mystique, but also to the library, so that it really makes sense that I'm here tonight. Some of the highlights of what you will discover in the book it's just not about a guy running around shooting birds and drawing them. I mean, I would hate to leave you with that impression because nobody want to read it really. But it also involves some other really interesting concepts or themes. And one of them is the history of our country in the 19th century. And why the 19th century is so important. It was really the foundation of this nation. A lot happened in the 19th century. We fought 3 wars. War of 1812. We fought the Mexican-American War, the Spanish War, and if that wasn't enough, we had a civil war in between. So, as the story of Audubon progresses in the book, Rhodes really outlines and clarifies these historic events of all kinds as you go through this. The other part of the book, it's really a love story. John loved his wife very much. It was a mutual support for the whole period of their lives. Nature. Audubon describes nature in a very poignant way, showing what this continent looked like back in the early 1800s. It was marvelous with the amount of flora and fauna, and he was just amazed by that. And the other part of that love story is that both John and Lucy fell in love with the country, and they really become patriots in a true fashion, and carried through with that through their whole life. John was from France, and Lucy was actually English, so that even makes it more interesting. 2 immigrants coming and falling in love with this country, and really adding to what we have today. The other part of the overview, there was a huge earthquake in New Madrid actually, in 1811. It was a monstrous earthquake. There were 2, about 2 days apart, and then another one about 3 months later on. And it was devastating. If that happened today, Memphis would probably be totally destroyed. So that's discussed and shown what it did, the area. The economy was fragile. We had lots of ups and downs. They had depressions and recessions. And part of that was due to the Louisiana Purchase. because we had to pay for it. And they insisted in paying that it was in coin of gold and silver coin, which stripped out a lot of this right out of our economy. And then the other part of the
time to wrap up.
Okay, the next part of the story really is transport, which was just amazing what they had to go through for transport. So in summary, we have a well-documented, well-written biography that you will enjoy through the traveling through the 18th century, and ending with the famous celebrated Birds of America, where these prints, I have a few here and so on, that ended up at the end of their journey. So that's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Would you like to say a few words about the library?
Yeah, I sure would. The library has been very close to me in the sense that I've been able to give 3 month-long, or last year was 2-month-long exhibits on the collections. One on Audubon, one in Courier, and the other on Maps. And it's a great platform for that, for the public. The other thing that really struck me in the science area, in education, I saw my first 3D printer in the library, and I was fascinated by it. So being a platform for the community for science is really an important feature that I really appreciate.
Joel, thank you so much. And thank you for telling us about that marvelous biography of Audubon. That's our last presentation. Before we get to the voting, I want to say a few words about the library myself. All libraries are treasure houses, both for personal development and for public good, for the dissemination of knowledge and the nourishing of imagination, and for a kind of browsing in the broadest sense among our interests that most areas of our culture no longer allow. They're also one of the last bastions of civic life that work, where anyone, regardless of political orientation or wealth or any other characteristic, which characteristics that often separate us, everyone is welcome at the library. And we're particularly lucky in Ridgefield to have such a marvelous facility, staff, and capacity to provide all of those benefits to the community of every age. So we're lucky to have it, and it's critical to support it. We're up to about $1,600 of our $3,000 match. I hope the rest of you who haven't yet given will join in now. We're going to give our gift baskets now to attendees, a random drawing. But before we do that, I would just like to tell you that if you enjoy this kind of book conversation, you can go to our website at 1000bookstoread.com, where you can see all of the books, including Roz's that I've selected with some of my commentary on them. You can comment on my choices. And most importantly, you can add your own books to the list. So you can be a participant in this merry argument about what books everybody should read before you die. So if you go to 1000bookstoread.com, you can just see all the stuff in my book, see all the books people have added, and help us build the next 1,000 by adding a book of your own. My book was available at Books on the Common, as the other ones that were talked about today. And also, I'm not sure that there's going to be a 2021, but if there is going to be one, you could consider the 2021 1000 Books to Read Before You Die calendar, which is a Workman page-a-day calendar with something about books on every day. If you enjoy reading, you would like it. I'm going to turn it back to Brenda now, who is going to tell us who won our door prizes.
Well, hello, and thank you, Jim, and thank you all those amazing presentations. It's fantastic. I loved it. So the door prizes, Connie and Laureen from our development office took the tickets and had drawn them. So I know who won, and I will announce them now. So again, these are gifts made possible by Jim and Margot Mustick. So thank you very much. The first basket, which is including a t-shirt and 1,000 book t-shirt and mug, is going to Mr. Rudy Ruggles. So that one is Rudy. Fantastic. I love it. And the next one, and this one has some 1,000 book mug and page day calendar, and it looks like I can't even think what they're called, that you put
Post-it notes.
Coasters. This is going to Miss Jennifer Deloria. Yay, Jennifer. And then the last basket, which is a big basket here, which has books and coasters, a mug, t-shirt, calendar, the whole shebang, is going to Mr. Jonathan Wynn. So hooray, Jonathan. I wish I had confetti to throw, but congratulations to our door prize winners. Thank you.
And how can they pick those up?
So I think Laureen and Connie will get in touch with the winners and we'll figure that part out.
Great. Thank you, Brenda.
Yep.
Okay, we're up to $1,900 at the last count of the $3,000 match. And we are going to turn now to ask all of the contestants to come back onto the screen for a virtual round of applause. We're just waiting for Joel and Stephen. There's Stephen.
My camera is not working.
Oh.
I can't get it off. I can't
All
get
right,
it on.
well,
Really.
You're with us in spirit. And
There
Leslie, there you go. Leslie, you want to launch the poll?
Yep, I will do that. Hold
The
on.
poll for the attendee, for people in the audience, the poll will appear at the bottom of your screen. You can click on it. You'll have a list of the books, and you can vote for your favorite of the evening. There we go. Good Night Baseball, Merck Manual, Some, The 57 Bus, and John James Audubon. I don't think the poll is appearing on the panelist screen. So you're going to know the winner before I do.
So we're up to about 85% of people voted, so we're getting there.
Okay. All right, Leslie, let me know when we're done, and you can let us know who the winner is, or if you can show it on the screen to everyone. I can't see it right now.
Okay, we're up to about 88%, so probably another 30 seconds or so. I'll share the poll.
Perfect. Suspenseful.
We may not get the last 10%. We might have to just quit at 90% here. So
I think that's good enough.
yeah, okay, I'm going to end the poll now and then here we go.
And the winner is The 57 Bus by Dashka Slater, presented by Judy Silver. And you can see we had votes throughout. Second place was Some by David Eagleman, presented by Stephen Schwartz. So, Judy, congratulations.
Thank
in your second chance in the second appearance in the Battle of the Books to come out the winner. Thank you so much. Can I have a huge virtual round of applause for all of our presenters tonight? All right. Some closing remarks. In times like these, it's good to have company of books and of readers, and I'm grateful to all of the contestants and for all of you who've been watching tonight and sharing our collective faith in the power of books. Such faith in reading's power and the learning and imagination it nourishes is something I've been lucky enough to take for granted as both fact and freedom. Something I fear may be forgotten in the great amnesia of our in-the-moment news feeds and algorithmically defined identities, which hide from our view the complexity of feelings and ideas that books demand we quietly engage. To get lost in a book, be it story or study, is inherently to acknowledge the voice of another, to broaden one's perspective beyond the confines of one's own understanding. A good book is the opposite of a selfie. The right book at the right time can expand our lives in the way that love does, making us more thoughtful, more generous, more brave, more alert to the world's wonders, and more pained by its inequities, more wise, more kind. All those qualities are more important now than they've ever been. The library does so much to promote them. These qualities are the most enduring vaccinations we have against the diseases, both literal and figurative, that darken our days right now. Let me close my portion of the festivities with some sunlight by reading you a poem by the Irish poet Derek Mann, who died last night at the age of 78. It's a good poem to keep in mind in the anxious hour we find ourselves inhabiting. And while it may be wishful thinking, I've learned that, especially in dark times, Providence prefers to be met halfway. Here's the poem. How should I not be glad to contemplate the clouds clearing beyond the dormer window and a high tide reflected on the ceiling? There will be dying, there will be dying, but there is no need to go into that. The poems flow from the hand unbidden, and the hidden source is the watchful heart. The sun rises in spite of everything, and the far cities are beautiful and bright. I lie here in a riot of sunlight, watching the day break and the clouds flying. Everything is going to be all right. That's Derek Mann. May he rest in peace. For my part, I'll say be strong, be well, read good books, support your library and your local bookstore, and when you need it, your local liquor store. Most important of all right now, make your vote count. And hope that you'll join us in. Brenda, do you want to come back on and bid everybody an official good night?
Yep, sure.
Okay. So long, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Rob, I guess I'm having some technical issues, but I just thank you all so much. And I had put in the chat that this was Banned Books Week, and I think celebrating books and love of reading and all that that brings to our lives was just incredibly fitting. I thank Jim and Margot, the amazing panelists who each did a wonderful job. I know I have my next reading list ready to go. And I thank you all so much. Have a great evening.